Well, today I'm talking to the Reverend Mark Meatcher, who, together with his wife, the Reverend Melanie Smith, both good friends of mine, are partners in mission with the Council for World Mission, CWM, in Fiji. Mark, for various reasons, you and I have known each other for a very long time now, in some ways, but obviously the people of the Synod don't know you. I wonder if you could just briefly introduce yourself and then tell us what you're doing now and how come you're in Fiji.
Yes, it is a long time that we've known each other, Paul, and for members of Synod, I knew Paul's father before I knew Paul, so that goes back quite a long way now, I think, in time. But I became a minister in the United Reformed Church in 2009, and had some pastorates on the south coast in Christchurch and Dorset. Then moved to become a chaplain in a hospice in Southend after marrying Reverend Melanie Smith. I think she had become Reverend Melanie Smith by that stage, if I remember rightly, and then undertook some transitional ministry in the Chelmsford area, which was when Paul was moderator of Eastern Synod. So I worked with about 10 churches in the Chelmsford area, trying to work out what their future might be, how we could put them together into pastorate groups, what sort of ministry they needed. And that ended up with calling a church-related community worker, a new minister, to some of the churches in that area. And then for 4 years, as it ended up, Melanie and I were ministers in Enfield in North London. We had we had two groups of 3 churches each, which meant we had 6 churches between us. And over that period that we were in Enfield, we were really trying to work with the churches, trying to get them to work together more, and be more mission focused, community focused in the local area, which I think they managed to do. And then now, literally just almost 12 months ago now, Melanie and I have been out in Fiji as partners in mission with the Council for World Mission, based at the Pacific Theological College in Fiji. And that college is in the capital city of Fiji, and is a very ecumenical college. It's actually owned by 20 different churches from 16 different countries in the Pacific, and from, I think it's 6 different denominational strands, which I keep forgetting what they are, but Anglican, Methodist, Presbyterian, Congregational, Uniting Church, and Lutheran, I think it is. And I think I've probably got them all right now.
Excellent, good.
But I'm working with them. Essentially, I came here initially to be helping them with their marketing and with their fundraising, and that has developed over the last year. But perhaps we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute.
I'm sure we will, Mark. Yeah, that sounds good. And Fiji sounds really exotic, exciting. So what
Fiji Fiji is hot, humid, and wet, and we are very much missing the UK seasons. We feel that there's not been much seasonality in the weather in Fiji. It is just hot, humid and wet, and I think the temperature has maybe varied by 1 or 2 degrees over the whole year, and it's probably the lowest we've ever had. It is maybe 24, 23, and it's gone up to about 32, but sometimes that 32 can feel like 42. But when the sun is out, if you walk out and try and walk for any distance, you start sweating within 2 or 3 minutes of walking out the door.
Yeah, well, mixed picture then, but still. But what are you enjoying about being in Fiji, both in terms of Fiji as a context, but also in terms of what you're now doing?
I think there's quite a lot of things that we're enjoying. And I mean, the fact that we are mixing with not only students but lecturers who come from a wide variety of countries. So we've got I said there's 16 countries that the colleges represent or owned by, or churches in 16 countries. But so you've got people from essentially those 16 countries. We've also got lecturers from we have had, and we're gaining, and they're changing, but we've had lecturers from North and South India. We've got lecturers from Australia. We've got we'll have another American lecturer joining us soon for some period. Last year we actually had a lady lecturer who was Jewish, and she left us in August last year to go and continue her training to become a rabbi. So there's a whole width of people, and also the college, as I said, is more interfaith rather than just straightforward Christian, in that we have Hindus and Muslims on the staff team, as well as representatives from all the denominations that I mentioned earlier, plus Roman Catholics as well. So the breadth of Christianity and the breadth of faith is very, very wide. I think I still find it quite strange that Fiji is about 65% Christian as a country. And I think one of my most surreal experiences is, going around the shopping centre and having Hillsong's music being played over the loudspeakers rather than the latest rock music or Christmas tunes or whatever. So there's Christian music being played in coffee shops. And it's sort of like, oh, I recognize that song, and that's a surreal experience, I think. I'm not sure if it quite translates through to the whole ethos or ethics of the country quite as yet, but that's there. So that's a really good thing. I did have something else on my mind then that I was thinking about, but I've forgotten about it at the moment. But yeah, so that's quite good, and I think the other thing is, in terms of the ability to learn from different people, some of the talks, sermons, or interactions that we've had with students have been really interesting. So one of my highlights from last year was that we had a sermon on Jesus the pig, and it was a whole different emphasis was put over on the fact that in the culture that the person was speaking came from, the pig is effectively not quite revered, but treated as a special thing. And so the pig is actually sacrificed for the whole community. And so the whole idea of Jesus being not the lamb, but the pig that was sacrificed for us takes on a whole different meaning. And if you then interpose that on the biblical texts, in the biblical text, pigs are seen as totally wrong. So you have this whole culture clash between the cultures of the Pacific and the biblical texts. So how do you translate that, and how do you work that through? And that was just fascinating to hear. And again, even this morning, we had our communion service today, and the person leading the preaching was talking about the stones in the story of Jesus's temptation, where he said, the stones were the silent party of the conversation. So he took us to think about what the stones impact, or what the impact on the stones was in terms of Jesus's temptation. And that made us begin to think about those voices in the biblical texts and elsewhere in our world that are silenced today. So one of those sort of things are really encouraging, and send you home to think again, and to hopefully grow in your faith in different ways.
Yeah, it's interesting how different contexts and different cultures can actually put a very different perspective, and also make it very challenging sometimes to translate what the Bible is saying, because it in a sense we say it covers everything, but of course it at another level things do need to be interpreted in terms of their time and their context. Really interesting to hear some of those reflections and how that fits your context. Just sort of kind of swing in another direction. What what do you miss? I mean, maybe there's nothing you miss about the UK, but what what do you miss? And what are the struggles with
I,
being in
I
a
think
different context?
I think what we miss are easier. I mean, this may be confession time, but there's two things that I'm missing more than anything else. One is a nice hot bath and being able to sit and luxuriate in a nice hot bath, and the second thing is a decent pint of beer. Because one of the things that we've discovered here is that yes, you can get beer in Fiji, and you can get the international beers, but the sort of real ale beers that Melanie and I enjoy, you can't really get here. So those are the two things I'm missing. In terms of the challenges, in terms of living here, we're both vegans, so we you know, and in the UK now there is a wide range of vegan foodstuffs, and vegans are catered for, but here there is the foodstuffs there are things that we can get, and there's in some ways it's not a problem, but in other ways it is, in that we end up that we tend to shop in three different supermarkets, whereas in England we know we could go to one, or Scotland or Wales, we could go to one supermarket and get virtually everything that we would want in that one supermarket. You can't do that here in Fiji. And the other thing that's sort of related is that if you see something in a supermarket, or if you go out and see something in a shop that you might think you might want, you should buy it there and then, because if you go in the next week, it will not be there anymore, and they do not restock in time. So say, even, I mean, not quite like this, but if you went in and there was baked beans on the shelf, you'd pick your baked beans up, because the next week there might not be any baked beans on the shelf. So it would have to wait till they reorder it, because they've then got an empty shelf. So there's some strange things like that happen.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you've got some kind of mundane missings. When I worked overseas, my confession would be mushrooms, which we could only get
Oh,
very
mushroom.
occasionally, and Christmas pudding,
Yeah.
of course. So those were
Yes.
the two things. So one year we got a lot of Christmas puddings because I put it in a letter that I was missing Christmas pudding. So several people sent us one. So that was good.
Yeah, mushrooms are very expensive here, and that we're on tinned mushrooms, not real mushrooms, because they are so expensive.
Yeah. Mark, you're about, as you say, you've been there about a year.
Yeah.
So obviously settled, but it's a long way, and it's different, all the rest of it. What are your hopes at this point, and what are things that we might pray for you and for the situation there?
I think obviously what I came over here to try and do was to actually increase the student numbers, and try and promote the college on the world stage a little bit more. I'm pleased to say that the student numbers are already increasing, and I think partly that's because they dropped the cost of their Bachelor of Divinity degree this year. Which means that we've actually had an intake of, I know it doesn't sound like much, but it is for the college. I think we've got 7 students doing a BD, and we've got 13 students doing a master's, and these are new starters this year, and 1 doing a PhD. And as a result of that, we now have all the student accommodation bar 1 unit on site is occupied. So we couldn't, although we could have taken more in and they could live off site, we couldn't really cope with any more. So praying, things to pray for are actually still, we do need more students, because that's not sustainable and needs to increase. But the bigger vision of the college is that it is on a trajectory to become a university over the next 2 years now. So by 2025, it hopes to become the Pacifica Communities University, which means that there will be 2 new schools, not just a theological college, but there will be 2 schools added: School of Ecology and Resilience, looking at things like climate change, and looking at how communities can be resilient against the changes that may be coming to them. And we are very aware in Fiji of the climate change issue, because we're already seeing villages that are having to move because they're losing ground, or losing, the water is actually coming up. And in fact, we've already heard of one village where they've had to move twice already. So and the upheaval that causes. So there's great need for that. And there's also another school which will be to do with Pacifica philosophies. So again, there's a focus on indigenous spirituality and the lessons we can learn from the indigenous people of the land. So there is a big need to pray for that change, because we know any change is difficult. A lot of our churches have experienced a lot of change over the last couple of years, particularly with COVID. That caused quite a bit of disruption within the life of our churches. But here, the college is looking to transition to become a university. So please do pray for that process, because in any situation where there's change involved, there will be difficulties along the way, and we're beginning to encounter them.
Great, Mark, thank you so much for talking with me. It's been really great to catch up with you, and we will certainly pray for you and hopefully catch up with what's happening in Fiji at sometime in the not too distant future. But meantime, blessings on Melanie and yourself. We wish you well as you continue in the partnership and mission there. God bless you.
Thank you.